And we're live. Welcome to the new episode of Ask Me About My Dracula, where we explain supernatural TV shows, books, and movies. I'm one of your hosts, Kel McDonald, and I draw comics that you can find at kelmcdonald.com.
And I am Ma'at Crook, and you can find me on Twitter at Ma'at Crook.
And our guest this week is...
I'm Allison Chabet. I draw deadwinter.cc.
And this week we're going to talk about the TV show iZombie. We're not going to cover the comic that it's based off of that much because none of us are really familiar with it. But, Allison, what do you think the show iZombie is about?
Well, I've kind of heard the what do you call it? The synapse before, because my friends actually like it. It's about a lady who eats corpses and then she poops.
And what do you think iZombie is about?
Well, all I know about it is that it's a woman who's a zombie, but she's living in a world with people who aren't zombies. That's the little that I know about it. But I like to think of it as like the title makes me think of a spokesperson, like someone standing at a podium being very serious. iZombie.
See, it made me, because it does its logo looks like that, like the way Apple does all their products. So when I went into the show not knowing anything, I thought it was going to be about, like, computer zombies somehow.
Awesome.
It is not about computer zombies.
No?
No.
Because you've seen it.
Yes.
I have not.
Yes. So the main character is named Liv Moore.
Oh, jeez.
She is bitten by a zombie in the first episode and then becomes a zombie. The zombies in this world can remain sentient as long as they are fully fed on a diet of brains. So this medical student, Liv Moore, decides to switch her focus medical-wise to being a coroner, so she has access to all the dead people in the morgue's brains.
That sounds pretty illegal.
Yeah, and some pretty clear thinking for a dead person, too.
Then she ends up she gets caught by her boss, who is then like, can I do, like, tests on you for being a zombie? And she agrees to that so she doesn't get ratted out. And then there's a cop that's introduced, and he's, like, trying to prove himself. And when she eats someone's brains, she gets their memories. So she's eating all the murder victims' brains, claiming to be a psychic, and is helping this cop that wants to prove himself.
Okay.
That's the point that I think is really interesting about the show, is the idea that you eat someone's brains and you sort of digest their memories. Because, I mean, especially coming from, like, a medical coroner, the show's about a medical student who eats brains, but does it ever actually explore, like, even in kind of a loose way, like the physiological way that the digestive system and the neurological system can work together to kind of extract knowledge from brain pieces? Or is it just sort of like a magic, like, the brain
like a magic MacGuffin thing.
That's not as fun.
MacGuffin for supernatural procedural show, for the most part.
Why wouldn't her boss want to study that?
He seems to, like, because she's unhappy as a zombie, he is focusing on curing zombieism.
Okay.
Because she also tells him there were other people at the party where zombies got loose. So her boss is basically like, you know, a cure would be a good thing to have to prevent the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
So he prioritized what to study.
How else is she like a typical zombie? She eats brains.
So also all the zombies, like, all the color gets removed from them basically. so her hair turns like super bleached out, and then she gets really, really pale. So the other main zombie guy, who's like the bad zombie guy that pops up more and more, is named Blaine, and to cover up that he's a zombie, he starts doing like fake tanning and dyeing his hair.
Does the rest of the world know that that's what happens to zombies?
No one knows about zombies except for the people who are zombies. And it turns out what caused the zombies is some tainted chemicals that ended up in like an energy drink. So the company that made the energy drink is sort of aware that they made zombies.
Is there any other physical debilitation that comes with prolonged exposure to the zombie virus, or like you still like fit and healthy muscular wise? And
she rages out. She sometimes goes. She gets like a super rage Hulk mode.
So there's not like some element of decay going on that sort of puts a timer.
No decay. She can't taste anything except for extremely spicy stuff now.
Mm.
So all the zombies like use a lot of hot sauce.
But as long as they're eating brains, their body doesn't decay, and their mind still stays intact.
Right, exactly. So they do find a zombie who's underfed, and they're the one that's more like traditional, what we would think of a zombie movie, where they're shuffling and just sort of like brain.
Degenerative.
Yeah.
Alright.
The main characters are very charming. They're a lot of fun to watch solve murders. Like, I feel like the show puts rightly paid a lot of attention to that, because if you're going to have like a procedural show with kind of a formula of like, the characters got to be fun.
Yeah.
It's a bit unclear about what can and can't spread zombieism. So
it's a bite, right?
It's a bite, but also a scratch. And I think it's implied that sex can like transmit it too. So,
and energy drinks.
And well, if you drink the original tainted energy drink.
It's sort of like a bodily fluid-based transmission.
So the main character breaks up with her fiancé and doesn't tell him why after becoming a zombie, because she didn't want to explain what happened, but also didn't want to risk him getting turned into a zombie too.
Yeah.
That's thoughtful.
But the main love interest guy, her ex-fiancé, ends up having a really interesting plot. I thought he was going to be super duper boring, like just there for the main character to go, oh, I wish that we could have a relationship again. But it turns out he's a social worker, and the evil zombie guy, Blaine, is killing homeless kids to basically feed himself and a bunch of people that he turned into zombies and is now blackmailing into paying extreme prices to keep fed.
Like, who's blackmailing him?
Well, like, he's doing the blackmailing. So it's basically, he finds all these super rich people, turns them into zombies, explains the situation, and says, now if you want to keep having all your cognitive functions, you need to pay me $1,000 a meal to have brains delivered to your house.
Sounds like they got an easy way out of it, though. They just die.
So he is killing all of these homeless kids to fund that business. And so one of the plot lines through the whole season is the fiancé figuring out what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Because a lot of it, the participants in his social work go missing.
Yeah. And that's how he ends up eventually finding out the main character's a zombie and all the zombie stuff that's going on.
Is it like a homeless and runaway shelter that he has, or?
Yeah, he like works at one. He ends up like getting really fixated on what's causing them to go missing, and to the point where he thinks that he might be going crazy, and then the homeless shelter eventually fires him, but he cares enough about the kids to keep looking even though he's been fired.
I'm assuming when you eat the brain and get the memory, it doesn't matter what part of the brain that you eat, right? It's just any piece. You sort of blur the lines on the medical end of it.
Yeah, she's just eating any piece. She also gets the personality of the person whose brain she ate.
That's interesting. Considering like that's a lot of, I think personality is a lot of the frontal lobe end of the brain. It seems like the most accessible part of the brain to eat. Yeah. I mean, like if you've ever heard the story of Phineas Gage, the old railway worker who had a rail spike go up through the front of his head, and it sort of damaged the frontal lobe, and he survived the experience, but afterwards he experienced a dramatic shift in his personality. So
and
they've
that's
sort
of what started lobotomies, right?
I don't think so. That was sort of like a lot more sinister.
I heard that like that story was used to be like, this is why the lobotomies would work, but I could be wrong.
It sounds like for this iZombie show, I find myself compelled and fascinated by the medical end of it that's sort of,
glossed over.
No, that's sort of highlighted by the fact that it stars a practitioner of medicine. So there's that link between, there's something medical going on, there's something physiological, involving like, the digestive system and all the other systems and how they're sort of co-opted by this condition and how they work in different ways. But it sounds like a lot of it is just, it just works, and then it becomes another procedural. So it sounds a little disappointing to me from the perspective of someone who hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
It sounds like the cool stuff is window dressing for a lot of samey stuff that you get from a lot of other shows on
that
TV.
Would definitely be like an accurate assessment of the show.
So it's just like Bones.
But, except the characters are well written.
Okay.
And I like also like the character drama doesn't come from people not keeping other people in the loop or whatever. Like, so she keeps her fiance out of the loop, but she does usually like tell her boss, who then becomes good friends with her, like, hey, so this is going on, and this is maybe a thing we should look into related to zombies. And there's also, so it's either like or it's something that's understandable. So she is having problems with her roommate because her roommate is frustrated that she can no longer get a read on someone who was once her good friend. And that lack of being able to read her is because her personality keeps getting slightly altered by eating brains.
Does the roommate play like a big role in the story, or is
the roommate is a lawyer, so she pops up now and then. She would be more of a minor character.
Okay, because I keep thinking like I watched Orange Is the New Black, and as far as like peripheral characters go, Piper's boyfriend was like, I wished at like midway through season 1 and then into season 2, I wished that like here's this character, and I wish I never had to see him again.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's that effect with the roommate. Like, yes, we get it about the roommate. Please go back to it.
Use it so much that I got tired of her.
All right.
Like, it's more her being frustrated and then kind of being like, whatever, and leaving, and doesn't make a huge deal out of it, but you can tell that there's something wrong.
So it's like developing in maybe like a future conflict.
Yeah. And since she's a lawyer, she is sometimes involved in the cases that are getting solved.
everyone seems so professional in this world. It's kind of alien to me as just some artist. Like
Yeah,
there's just a,
everyone is an adult who makes adult decisions, and I appreciate that.
yeah, they're like all you have like a coroner, you've got a social worker and a lawyer, and they're all hanging out, and I'm like, gee whiz, if I'd only taken a left-hand turn in my life at some point, maybe I could have been in that kind of lifestyle as well.
Except it doesn't really exist, though, does it? Lawyers don't go and talk to the coroner, do they?
No, unless there's like evidence or whatever.
Yeah, but they get the evidence from
Gumshoe.
like it's
Phoenix talks to
it's
Gumshoe.
giving to them. Like the investigator gives them the evidence, not the coroner, I thought.
And then they also do a good job of when there's something that seems like it might be a plot hole or is a little bit weird, you usually eventually find out an explanation for it. Like when fiance is like, all these kids are going missing and we should look into it. And he tells the cop main character, who brings it to his boss, and his boss is like, there are no bodies and we're the homicide division, so this isn't our business. Talk to missing persons, I don't care. And then you find out that evil zombie guy has turned the chief of police into a zombie and is blackmailing him to look the other way.
Of course. Is evil zombie guy the same guy that turned Liv into a zombie?
Unintentionally. Basically, he was dealing drugs at the party, so it was like him and a bunch of other people that were both doing drugs and drinking this energy drink turned into zombies first.
Now, in terms of eating the brains to maintain your sentience, does it have to be a human brain, or do they ever touch on like the possibility of kind of like using an animal brain as sort of a last measure? Because I remember I used to play a long time ago. I used to play the old White Wolf vampire games with my friends, and in the rule books they say human blood is this good, but in a pinch and a lesser effect you can use animal blood if you have to. But is that sort of like...
I've never eaten animal brains on the show, but the main character seems to have her shit together, so I assume she would have tried animal brains.
They haven't addressed that at all. So like the different, like there's a lot of different... We have complex brains, but at the end of the day, our brains are kind of the same as any other mammal. So like if these kids are like paying thousands of dollars for human brain, could they like catch a squirrel and just eat squirrel brain, or would they adopt the personality of the squirrel?
Have y'all ever eaten brains?
I have not. I've eaten every other part of the animal, not never the brain.
Kel, have you eaten brains?
Not eaten brains.
I haven't either, but one of my grandma's husbands, Woodrow, he was a farmer, and he would have squirrel brains in scrambled eggs.
Yeah, see, it's doable.
Yeah.
When social worker fiance starts to get on the trail of the evil zombie brain organization, he finds brains in a cooler in the back of one of their cars and shows it to the cops. And the evil zombie guy smartly, quickly says, those are calf brains, and we work for this fancy butcher shop, so that's like a delicacy, so that's why I have this in my car.
So they did touch on it at least.
Yeah, so they're aware that other animal brains are edible, so
Other
that's their
animals do
cover
have brains.
the butcher shop. So they probably can only eat human brains.
Yeah, they seem like they have a lot of liberties, but they're also sort of limited in that same way. What a tragic existence.
How long does the personality last?
It's as long as they're eating it. So, like, if they eat a different person the next day, it will fade.
Well, that has got to be...
One brain does live longer than a day.
Okay.
So since they still sort of function as living human beings biologically, do they get sick or any other diseases? Like if they had like some sort of like tummy whoopsies that happened while they're eating brains, would that make it harder? Like, you know, when you get sick and like you get the stomach virus, like are they still susceptible to that? That would kind of,
Has not gotten sick in the show, so
all right, so
Oh, she could get mad cow.
yeah, from eating the
that
cow
would be
brain.
great.
Only she had a human
Let's
brain.
let's
But it could eat a human who ate a cow brain, got mad cow disease.
let's send that idea to the show. Please do an episode where Liv gets mad cow.
How many episodes have you watched?
I watched the whole first season.
And what was your let's do least favorite first. What was your least favorite?
My least favorite what?
Least favorite thing that happened, or least favorite episode, or something?
Trying to think. It was one of the earlier episodes. There's an episode where she eats the brain of an artist who was sleeping with all the ladies. And that episode, not because it was bad, but because it was just kind of boring. It was kind of too by the numbers, and that was before they had built up the rest of the cast. So
I'm surprised they found an artist who's not too shy to get into that kind of lifestyle.
he's like a performance artist. So
Okay, well, a different kind of artist.
yeah,
Not a cartoonist.
no, he's an artiste.
Okay, that's the big difference. Now, having watched an episode of the show, if you could make any sort of changes to it, what's an element that you would like to change about iZombie?
I think that I would maybe break the procedural part of the format more often, because it seems like all the best episodes are about like solving the mystery and figuring out like Blaine's like evil drug dealing zombie organization.
A little less like CSI or NCIS and a lot more Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah. A lot of the writers that work on it worked on Veronica Mars, so it definitely is very Veronica Mars-y.
That's another show I haven't watched. But I hear it's good.
I hear it's good too. So I would like have more of a big plot.
I got you, more overarching plot than just the episode-to-episode procedural.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff like that I wasn't a big fan of at first ended up paying off in the end. Like sometimes her mom shows up to sort of yell at her about things. That pays off in sort of the finale.
You could always rely on a parent to come in and give you a hard time.
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite episodes when they get away from the procedural stuff?
Yeah, I like, there was one episode, so Liv meets an attractive zombie guy who's a rock star. And basically how she finds out about Blaine's blackmailing rich people master plan is by dating this dude. And then they have a serious conversation where she's like, so you just had brains delivered to your house and didn't question where they came from and just went about your business and you didn't put any thought about where this came from. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Because it's a person's brain.
Yeah.
It had to come from somewhere. So they have a serious conversation, fight about that, which is justified, and then he agrees to be, a spy in the rich people getting brains because the evil zombie guys turn them all into zombies. And that leads to, like, the first sort of serious throwdown.
Is this ever released to the police or revealed to the police that this is going on?
Well, the police chief knows, and he's keeping a lid on it, basically.
Oh, that's right. He's a bad guy.
He's forced to be a bad guy. He
So
himself in the end.
So everything that they do on just vigilante style, not involving the police?
Right. Because they are under the assumption that the police don't know about zombies.
I think that's is this really, how widespread was one bad batch of the energy drink? Because I would assume if someone doesn't know that they have to eat brains, then you'd have sort of a phase where a lot of people who had the energy drink who became zombies didn't know they had to get something that's sort of inside of a rock that lives in
bad batch was at one party.
Oh, that's one really, really small batch.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and everyone at the party, none of them, well, some of them had to have become...
The party either died or got turned into a zombie. So they are there could be other zombies we don't know about. That's kind of over the whole first season.
Because I think that's one of the points that I'm thinking about now, having heard a little bit about it, is, a zombie that's sort of without its sentience is a bit of a disturbing the peace case, and it sort of really makes itself known because of its lack of any decorum or sense of the rules or need to hide it all.
Zombies that they found that didn't have sentience basically fell through the floor of an old warehouse and then got stuck.
Okay, so they're just sort of incompetently out of sight, and that's why no one knows about them yet.
Yeah.
All right.
Just a happy accident.
Yeah, they need the brains so that they know better.
Yeah. Has it been talked about? Are they able to reverse it if they fed one of those zombies a brain?
They tried, and that did not work. So it seems like once you lose sentience, you're done.
Okay.
When she gets the main character, Liv Moore, when she is at her coroner's job and she's extracting the brains from the bodies, I assume that's cutting open a piece of the head. Does she go about hiding that? Does she cut them open from the back, or does she have any way of covering
it first? But she got caught by her boss fairly quickly.
So
now what does she do? Because her boss knows.
I think her boss is fudging paperwork to cover.
Well, there's also cases where if these are people's families, then you've got the funeral homes, and you've got embalming, and you've got the family involved, and if there's a hole in their skull, you say, why is there a hole in my loved one's head? And that's happening a lot. So it's does she cover it up at all, or are they just Capri Suns with the straws in the top?
Okay, so she lucked out, and definitely a few of the murder victims had their heads bashed open.
Okay.
She has had, the ones that didn't have their heads screwed up, basically her boss has been knows how to make someone look nice while still doing an autopsy. So he could just come up with some excuse on why he needed it, but did it in a way that the funeral home people would be able to cover up.
Well, yeah, because I see, the way I see it, normal autopsy, you've got, that Y-shaped incision in the abdominal cavity so you can explore, the viscera, but your skull is a very hard barrier, and that's sort of you need a legitimate reason to specifically, saw it open to get in there to get a piece of brain. And that is it's when you show up at the hospital with a bullet wound. It's there's only a few reasons why you'd be presenting with this particular physical anomaly. You were shot, there was something happened, or you're corpse and you have a piece of your skull missing, someone obviously cut it open, and the question is why. And I guess it's not an important point, but it's one that I think about, like, how do you address that? Are you just like, okay, we ship the corpses off to, like, the coffin mill, and then they come to the families prepackaged to bury, and then no one ever sees it?
Or they just assume because they were murder victims, the coroner had to investigate
A
that
small
area?
piece of their brain.
Yeah.
He's mostly eating murder victims, and I think that's all explanation for brain head trauma.
Yeah.
A lot of screwdriver injuries.
Yeah.
So with each episode, since it's a procedural, they investigate some murder solved. But it sounds like there was a plot that carried throughout the.
Yeah, and that's the evil zombie making his, like, business of overcharging for brains.
Okay. And it gets solved in season 1.
Yes. So the overall plots are, there's zombie drug dealer business, because basically he's using all his drug dealer skills to make his brain selling business. There's also the plot of fiance investigating the missing kids, which ties into the brain selling business. There's an overall plot of Liv's boss is looking for a cure. So, like, they make zombie rats, and they're trying to cure the zombie rats.
I have a question about the main evil zombie who is turning homeless kids into
No,
zombies.
he's not turning the homeless kids into zombies. He's turning rich people into zombies.
Okay, that was my question. I thought they were the homeless kids. And I
The
was going to
homeless
say,
kids are getting murdered to be food for the rich people.
okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was going to be like, why not just get rich people? But then they already do that, so that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about the show? Like,
I really, really like the cast's chemistry. Like, her boss is a really funny Indian guy. And they have a lot of good, like, back and forth. I appreciate how competent everyone in the show is, despite not addressing a lot of the medical stuff. 'Cause, like, when the evil zombies are on to the fiancé, they break into his house and try to kill him, and he shoots one 5 times, calls the cops to say, "I've just shot an intruder in my house." And main character cop shows up and is like, "Okay, where's the intruder that you shot?" And then fiancé is like, "Okay, he was right here, but now he's gone, and I don't know why. I swear I shot him 5 times in the chest." And then the cop is like, "I think we're going to get you some court-ordered psychiatric help. Because you think you saw a person, and
apparently it was an imaginary person.
Imaginary person that you shot 5 times. So you're someone who's seeing things and owns a gun."
Well, was there blood, though? Like, do zombies not bleed at all?
He didn't bleed anywhere.
Was it the same cop that is a zombie that came to his house?
No.
Okay.
It was the cop that Liv helped solve murders.
Okay.
So it was basically, you're a friend of a friend, so I'm going to just tell you flat out, you need to go get psychiatric help.
Yeah. It sounds like, despite so many other shows that we talk about, you would recommend this one. So.
Yeah. I would recommend iZombie.
What's your best pitch for why you would recommend it?
Well,
give us the elevator pitch for it.
It's a really strong character-focused show that has a little bit of supernatural. I just really like the characters a lot. Really. Make everything fun. with all this zombie murder going on.
Yeah. And zombies don't typically have personalities, so that says a lot that you really like the characters.
Yeah. And it's also like her personality changes when she eats brains, but her personality still kind of shines through.
Mm-hmm.
So she's taking on a few like superficial bits of whoever's brain she eats personality.
Awesome. You've actually convinced me. Usually you convince me not to watch something,
Well,
but I want to give it a try.
I've talked about a lot of really bad shows.
Yeah.
I think I don't normally watch a lot of shows, but I think I would watch it with other people. I think I would sit down and I would say, yeah, I'll watch this also, but I don't think I would go out of my way. Like, judging by the description, it sounds like a lot of what it offers I can get from like somewhere else, and a lot of the interesting stuff they don't really go as deep into as I would like. So I think I would give it like on a scale for me as far as my interest goes, I'd give it like a B or a B plus for interest and how you've sold me on it.
And I like murder mysteries, and I like strong characters. So those are two reasons why I think B plus A on giving it a try.
Yeah.
Good scale. Good scale.
So, Allison, tell us about Dead Winter.
Oh,
Dead Zombies.
Dead Winter is not a lot like iZombie. There are zombies and there's a lot of them, and when they bite you, it's sort of I've actually thought about it. It's sort of a viral infection which sort of takes over the host of the body and sort of reproduces using the salivary glands, which is why saliva inspires them to bite so much. So it's sort of like if you've ever read about like the sort of the snails like parasites that sort of co-opt the body to like make them turn a certain color and get eaten as part of their reproductive process. That's sort of been my like in my head. That's a little secret for behind the scenes. It's how the zombie thing works, but the zombies are completely background element in my story that I write. It's a lot more about characters who had lives beforehand and who had jobs, and those jobs have certain skills which translate into new applications in a sort of like adventurous post-world like reimagining of how your life would be, like whatever career you have, like the tools of your trade, how you go about working, how that skill set would reapply in the context of societal collapse and reconstruction. And that's a lot of the core of my comic.
Oh. So like someone that was an accountant.
Someone who was an accountant, they would have a very good sense of keeping records and keeping track of things. Someone like that would be very good at keeping inventory of like medical supplies, ammunition, food stuff, and they would have a very good sense of necessity and organization, which in a reconstructed society would be extremely useful skill.
Yeah.
And
How
so,
long ago has it been? How many like months or years has it been since the first outbreak?
In the comic, I've been doing it for a while. I have it kind of, what do you call it? It's sort of unpacked a little bit, so it's probably actually been about like a week or two.
Okay.
So it's not been that long. People can still remember the before times, and they're sort of like on the cusp of adapting.
Okay.
so the main characters, their jobs were one's a waitress.
There's a waitress, a nurse, there's a plumber, and interestingly, there's a hitman who's got some marks that he's still trying to clean up on. He's sort of the oddball of it.
Why would he even bother?
It's actually he's a hitman, and sort of like the moneyed people, the clients he'd work for, sort of before it all happened, he's sort of a liability, so they're gonna, we've gotten use out of him, let's get rid of him. So there was an attempt on his life that didn't quite work out, so he's kind of trying to get back at them.
Okay.
So, and now the world's fallen apart, and it's sort of like following the pieces and like finding the people on a little list of, who am I going to get before I disappear? And one of those people is the main character, Lizzie. She's a waitress. Her father is a real estate agent who is sort of involved in that sort of like organization, and he's one of the marks that the hitman Monday wants to bump off. So he ran into the mark's daughter, and he's sort of playing along with her, getting her to bring him to his mark.
He's using her. That's
Yes.
going to bite him in the ass later.
Probably.
Yeah.
So he's got kind of like a villain in the hero role in the story.
Yeah.
So, is the zombie outbreak just where they're at, or is it the entire world?
It is the entire world. Like there's no outside help. There's no outside broadcast signals. Power stations are going down, and there's no sort of sign that anywhere in the peripheral is still alive, still functioning normally, because it's sort of like 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 16, 32. It's an exponential sort of explosion, and that sort of sweeps the globe.
Since it's only been a week, there's that transition between there being a structure like government and stuff like that, and now...
Yeah, it's been like about 2 weeks, and sort of this. There are like remnants of societal structure. Like a lot of it is sort of casting groups as like factions. Like there's a supermarket faction where like kind of like a Walmart group, and like there's all like little department workers have their own little department specialties. Like there's Dale from receiving. He works in the back, shifting boxes, so he's kind of big and strong. And you've got like the sporting goods department lady's very athletic, and you've got like the home stuff girl. She's like really good at knitting, and she kind of makes a blanket to comfort her friends and everything. And so it's sort of like they have their own skills, but you have like the police department is sort of consolidated, and they're sort of under the mindset where like something is beyond our control, so we're going to kind of box in and preserve ourselves so that no matter what happens, the rule of law can continue to live, even if it's sort of like doing whatever that they need to do to make sure that happens. But then you also have like the National Guard, which is a lot less disciplined and staffed by a lot of like young men who are sort of they have access to a lot of hardware that a lot of other people would not have access to, and they have that sort of like the rules are gone, let's party sort of attitude, and they have a lot of conflict. So you have sort of like the faction of like the disciplined police department versus like the crazy wild sort of military, and then there's people trying to not get caught in the crossfire between their conflicts for territory and resources.
Awesome. And how are the zombies in this story similar and different from other zombies we've...
I started the comic back in 2007, and a lot of my idea back then was, well, I don't see any zombie stories, so I started writing it, and they're pretty standard fare zombies to start with, where they're mostly just there for like action fodder, background motivation, and as like a catalyst for things to move forward. But as the story goes on, I've been working sort of, since I have that sort of viral aspect to it, generationally. The first run of people who are bit by the zombies are sort of not the most fit and not the most, survivally, but sort of after you weed through there's going to be fewer and fewer zombies who have more and more fit and capable hosts. And as the virus reproduces from body to body, it becomes a bit more evolved. So eventually you start seeing more capable zombies who are able to have a lot more sort of retention and access to the baser hunting instincts, and they are more able to run and climb, and they have a lot more mobility than just sort of shuffling. So there's sort of an evolution as the virus moves from host to host and grows. They become a lot lesser and lesser in numbers, but they become greater and greater in threat.
Wow.
The people that they turned are just in better shape and.
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, day 0 when it happens, you have just any old, Joe American, but then you've got 2 weeks to a month later, and you've got hardened survivor person who's sort of survived that long, and then finally they succumb, and the virus has a much more physically capable host in terms of hunting, biting, and reproducing.
That makes sense, and it keeps the threat up there too as the living characters start to learn how to survive better.
Oh yeah, right now where the story is the characters have come to a town which it's sort of like the industrial end of the city, which had access to when you're little and the school buses all come from the same school bus yard.
Yeah.
The big parking lot. Well, they had the school buses, so they moved them and they made a big wall around an area out of school buses. So they have this kind of walled-in, zombie-free civilization where the story is for the moment. So they're in a sort of a safe area where people are they've adapted. They've sort of set up a wall and a barrier, and then on the outside there's still a threat. And when they go back outside beyond the wall, that threat's still going to be there. But it's not going to be the same one that I've already written and people have already read about. It's sort of evolving, and sort of near the end of when they were on the outside, you did get to see a little bit of that evolution in action. So when I bring the story back into the outside, to kind of keep it fresh, it changes in time, sort of in my head, in accordance with how a virus would actually work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been my thoughts.
I got to see, Kel was looking at some of your pages.
Yeah, I actually pulled them up while you've been explaining. I've been.
Oh, really?
Up on my screen, so that way the people watching the video can see.
And I like how the characters are drawn in a more cartoony style, but the coloring, the shading, is more realistic-y looking.
Yeah. The origin of that, the way I kind of came up with the way that I paint it, is I am classically trained as a painter. That's what I went to school for. I did a lot of oil painting, a lot of water media. Mm-hmm. But I've always had that, when I was younger, I'm I want to draw good, so I'm going to draw realistic. And I always sort of hit a wall where I didn't like what I did. So when I started doing the comic, I'm all right, I'm just going to draw it, and whatever style comes out of my hand is what it's going to be. So it's sort of like a natural extension of the schemas and the shapes and the visual language of just how my brain puts it out on paper. And that's what I do. And the reason I do it in black and white is I remember a long time ago my dad would be watching movies, and he'd always say, he grew up with the Munsters and everything, and he says, I always like the black and white movies, he says, because just when everything's in monochrome, you get a lot more, the actors are a lot more expressive, and there's a lot more contrast, and that always stuck with me. So I sort of work with, my old man used to like that, so I sort of have adopted it. And because you're working between pure white and pure black instead of a face being you can only get so bright with, say, a skin tone, and only so dark with the shadows, and you only have that much to work with, and, you'd have to use, value and hue contrast as well. If I work in pure, just light and dark contrast, I have a lot more levels in between lights, mids, mid-darks, and darks, where I can sort of play around and create expression and little details like that. I like to do little furrowed brows. Oh, and has Kel brought up the animated pages? Some of them I've been experimenting with animation in comics, so that's one of the other fun things.
That's every 100 pages or so, right?
Yeah, every 100th page is fully animated, but a couple of them
So here's an animated page.
Where was it? There's Like, I have to go back in my own archive.
What? How long does that take you?
They take me longer and longer every time that I do them. A couple, like there's some that are not 100 where I just do like one panel that's animated. I'm gonna pull up my files and see what's actually a GIF. So I actually just posted one on Twitter. Strips.
And the cat. The cat also has epic adventures.
That cat looks a bit like this cat, who is starved for attention right now.
But yeah,
Anyway, that's my comic.
You had said you put it down on paper, so do you work traditionally with like pen and ink on paper?
Oh, I work all in Photoshop. I used to bring a laptop to my old night job, and I'd work on it in the back office. So I do my sketching. I used to do my like thumbnailing and my planning on paper, and I do a lot of paper construction. But the actual production is all digital.
And what program do you use for the word balloons and text?
I do that all in Photoshop as well.
Oh, okay.
I actually have a layer mode that sort of creates it's like settings for an outline. So I just take the brush and like just brush in a big white field, and it automatically black outlines it. And then I put the text in, and I used to type it up because it was easier for me to rearrange the text. But I've started using the text as sort of an Ames guide, and I'd lower the transparency, and I do hand lettering over top of it so that it's more mine and less the font.
Yeah.
it gives it a little bit more life.
Yeah.
It does. It makes it more cohesive.
Yeah, it's like the writing matches the art because it's all my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I find lettering that looks too much like just something that you type on your keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of takes me out of the story because it doesn't jive. And sometimes I guess that has to do with the font not matching the style of the story.
Oh yeah, that's like a whole other discussion of like a font that's appropriate for a comic. It's like there's certain like elements to it. Like you don't want a serif font, and you don't want like a rigid sort of mechanical font. It's got to be a little bit organic, and it has to have like the visual organic qualities that would sort of convey the organic imperfections of human voice.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why hand lettering is super useful.
Yeah. How do you know when to use red?
Right now, the only two characters who have like an article of red on them are the waitress and the man who is following her. So it's sort of like a link between the two of them as like the two main characters.
Mm-hmm.
So they're sort of like the central focus of the story. The other two members of the party are just as important, but I haven't given them the red yet. Like, it's just the two that have it, and there's sort of a narrative link between them that sort of...
I really always like it when you have Monday in the distance, but then there's the red dots.
Yeah, you just see the red, like, you see, like, when I go jogging at night, and sometimes I see, like, someone's got, like, red, like, their TV lights on, it's just these two red dots in the darkness, and that always spooks me, and I sort of convey that.
It works.
Yeah.
What are your characters' names besides Monday?
Monday's the hitman. Lizzie is the waitress. Alice is the nurse, and Lou is the plumber.
Does the cat have a name?
The cat is Mr. Cuddles.
Mr. Cuddles.
Alright. So you guys should all go read Dead Winter at deadwinter.cc.
Yeah, I've been working on developing a video game actually about the comic. we're making, me and a friend of mine is programming it, and I'm doing all the animation. We're making kind of like the classic arcade style game, like the old Simpsons or the Ninja Turtles arcade game, except with the characters in the comic, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's an appropriate panel to stop on, Kel. It has an arcade machine in the background.
Yeah, look at that.
Really like that your nav changes when I hit refresh.
Oh yeah, it's a little bit of randomization code, so I have like one for each character. I've got to update them. I've had those ones there for a while, but I can just drop the files in, and every time it's different.
I'm trying to get to the nurse. There she is. Alright, well, we've been talking for an hour, so it's good.
Oh, it's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for being on, and like I said, viewers, go read Dead Winter. It's good. I have the first 2 books. Books are very pretty. You should grab them.
Very high quality.
Yes.
Yay.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Oh, and you can, in 2 weeks we won't have an Ask Me About My Draculas because Kel and I will be at the Artist Alley Fest in Portland.
Yes, you can stop by and say hi to us there.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have another episode at the end of August. Alright. Bye.
Ta-ta!
See ya.